We're here with Councilman, former Councilman. It's going to get hard to get used to not saying Councilman John Snyder because you've been here so long. But John's been Councilman up until midnight, May 31st.
Correct.
In North Canton for nearly 17 years, right, John?
Right. I came in November of 1998. I was appointed. And then I ran successfully up to till I resigned in May of this year.
And you replaced Darrell Revolt, who had become mayor. Or is that
Darrell became the mayor, left a vacancy in the 4th Ward, and then I applied for it and was voted in as the councilman of the 4th Ward.
And how long have you been in North Canton?
Living? You mean?
Yeah.
I moved here in 1975.
And you came from?
From Canton.
Oh, I see.
I opened a men's store on South Main.
I see.
I bought a building there and opened a men's store in 1976. So I moved here. They told me, I joined the chamber, they said, you got to get involved. So I got involved in politics, from the peripheral. Mayor Hines. Pardon me?
Right away?
Tried to, went to the chamber events, attended some meetings here. John Boydgen was the council president. Mayor Hines was here. He appointed me to the planning commission, asked me if I wanted to be on planning commission or civil service. I says, I'll go to the planning commission, which I knew nothing about. So I served a year there and became the chairman, served 2 years as its chairman, and I didn't have the technical background to serve as chairman. That really requires somebody as an engineer or surveyor. I could look at the plans and read them, but from the technical standpoint, so I just stayed on planning until I became a councilman.
And so when did you get involved in something other than just civic work, but in politics itself? Probably the biggest thing that I said I got involved in was when they did the annexation of the Hoover property, which was formerly called the Maytag Mall. And there were a group of activists that were totally opposed to it. I, as a business... What year would this have been?
That would have been around 70... No, excuse me, that was about in early to mid-'80s.
Okay.
And they actually placed a referendum, the first referendum ever to go on the ballot here in North Canton. And I got involved with, the council was active, but the law prohibits them from actually campaigning. So I got on the committee, which was headed by a group of citizens and funded by the developers, basically, McKinley Development. And they got on the ballot and it passed. And got my interest in it. And Greg Burnett, who was a councilman, was across the street. And he wanted to, how should I say, unseat a couple council members. He didn't work within the system well with, so he talked me into running against Darrell. And so, I, as being a novice, didn't know what to do, so I called Charles Brown, who's the head of the Republican Party. And I never forgot what he said to me. He says, young man, instead of running against Darrell, you should be calling him up and telling him you want to be his campaign finance manager. And then I knew, well, I think I did the wrong thing here. I shouldn't have run against him. And I ran against, I did quite well. I got about 42, 43% of the vote. I didn't do any door-to-door. I sent out some mailers, and I was well known in the community from the standpoint of running a small business. And then the following year, Darrell became the mayor because Bill Hines resigned and got me started. And Darrell and I spent a lot of years together, and he was a good mentor to me. And,
so Darrell didn't hold it against you?
Not a least bit, no. Darrell was very kind to me. And I haven't talked to him since he's come back, but he was always good to me. The years that he was in Worcester as council president, I talked to him every day and knew what was going on. He told me that when I got the job. He said, I'm going to tell you one number you want to put on your speed dial, the council clerk, and that was Mary Louise Biddle. He said, you talk to her every day and you find out what's going on and what's happening in the city. So I do that. I call, and many mornings I just came up, before I was even in leadership. And then I served 1 year. The second year, I was appointed in '98, and then I was made in December that same year, I was made chairman of finance, which is, it's the plum job in the council. And Greg Burnett appointed me chairman, and I stayed that way until I think 2003. When Pat Dioro took it over and came in. And then Pat served 1 year. I served on the committee, and Doug was president. Second year, he got off of it. He didn't want to do it.
Well, speaking about council clerk, in your remarks earlier tonight, you referred to recently resigned council clerk and retired, I think.
Right.
Gail Kalpak.
Right.
And a little emotional about that, John.
I spoke to her more, probably, and conservatively speaking, and I'm really, without exaggeration, probably 7 to 9 times a day at length, because she would call me. First of all, I have a vast institutional knowledge. I have a tremendous memory. I'm blessed with that. She would call me on matters, and then she would call me on other matters. And I went to her because I had decided in February, one of the dumbest things I did was not immediately come off the insurance. I should have gotten off immediately, but I was advised differently, so I stick to it. But anyway, at that point, I knew that night I was in trouble in leadership. In fact, you asked me. I knew I was in trouble, and I didn't know what to do. Honestly,
in trouble in what way?
In respect that I wasn't enjoying the respect of the community. I wasn't enjoying the respect of my colleagues. They were disappointed because they were looking to me for guidance and to some way to get out of this pickle we're in. And everybody's running for cover, and I'm here deflecting the bullets. So I don't know what to do. So at that particular point, I talked to the clerk, and we talked about some things. But anyway, I knew I was in trouble. So then I stepped down. And she called me. She was bawling her eyes. As I said, we had a very close relationship. And then when I applied to the state then in February because of the insurance situation, I had to do it anyway by the end of this year. But I was paying $1,000. Now I'm paying $116. So there's a big difference. But I told her, I said, Gail, I'm going to leave at the end of May. And she said, well, I'm leaving the end of August, but I'm moving it up to June 1st. And she left, and that was the end of it. But
in your discussions with the clerk, did she share with you her frustrations over the last year or so in the job?
There's no question. The thing is, and I think what's happening, it's a growing process. Our present law director, from the acumen of a lawyer, you're a lawyer yourself, you could be a perfect lawyer.
I'm an inactive lawyer.
Well, yeah, but still you're trained. You go to school, you learn. It can be, there's academic attorneys and there's practical attorneys. Courtroom experience, as I read in a paper today in a Suarez case, the man said the demeanor of Mr. Suarez's attorney convinced him. That's a showman. And that's what it's about. He's academically a very, very bright lawyer. But unfortunately, we're dealing with emotion. And sometimes it's not black and white. Sometimes, and it's a learning curve. And for her, the clerk, we never had a full-time law director. We always had part-time. And some of her authority was usurped because it was just gone to him. Things that she would normally have done. And she took that the wrong way. And it started to deteriorate beyond the point of, because I sat and talked to both of them, and they seemed to be, it was fine, everything was fine. But right now, unfortunately, there's a group of people that want his head. There's, but it disrupts the whole operation. It's easier sometimes, like a child, to give it a cookie and say, go ahead, even though it's an hour before supper. Sometimes, instead of saying, I know I'm not going to give it to you, just give it to them. The law is not black and white. Our citizens are not. If we stonewall them, they're going to, and rightfully so. I mean, they're thinking that it's nefarious, which it isn't. But if I've got something and you want it, I won't give it to you. Why won't I give it to you? What's there?
Well, as far as you were concerned, Gail Kalpak was a terrific...
She was technically an excellent clerk. There's no question. She was meticulous. She did a good job. She was loyal to me to the nth. and she was that way. She respected me as the president of council, and I worked very closely with her, and she knew that. She knew how the constituents would call, and she knew within an hour I would answer their call. I answered a constituent call today. I went out and I just said, I have no authority at all. I'm not an elected official. Let's talk about your problem. Let me get it to the right person. That's all they want. They don't care if I'm the mayor, I'm the president of council, I'm Martin Olson. They could care. Let's get my problem fixed.
But did the conversation ever come to a point it's either me or the law director?
Not to me, it wasn't. The biggest problem that nobody seemed to realize about Gail, her father, she's very, very close to her dad, who's in his 80s. He took ill, and her mother was ill and hospitalized. And unfortunately, the workload gathered up to the point where a couple of times she had plans to go see her family, and we held her over. And again, I go back to just saying, sometimes a little compassion goes a long way. But it was never said to me, either the law director or me. I mean, here's a woman that's 2 years away from 20 years of service. That's your highest. The difference in retirement is significant. So she had to be ready to go.
Now, in your remarks tonight, you talked about some of the achievements in your 10 years council member that you're proud of. And you named a number of them. But I'm going to ask you to say, what do you think was your greatest achievement?
Well, are you talking about money-wise or just things in general?
Just that gives you the most satisfaction as having been a North Canton councilman and a North Canton council president.
I probably would identify a couple of them, if I may. And one of them is the contract with Aqua of Ohio. We had a contract. They were paying us 87 cents. No, $1.60, excuse me. It was costing us 87 cents to produce. I renegotiated that contract with an attorney who I did all the work with an outside attorney, and we got it to where they're paying bulk rate, and it's $250,000 a year to the city. Money-wise, every council member now carries a computer. We've digitalized the whole council office. I was responsible for that, as well as the videos that we have. And I'm the worst person in the world when it comes to electronics because I don't know anything about them. But and probably even though I'll be criticized and people do it, Arrowhead was a great thing. I worked with Tom Rice on that, and we put that together. We never lost a dime on Arrowhead.
So you don't accept the criticism?
No, I can prove it in dollars and cents. $4.5 million we paid them. $2.5 million we financed at 6% interest that we paid ourselves. Then the state says you can't do that. That's smoke and mirrors. So I went out and secured a bond, 10-year bond. We owe now like $450,000. Our $2.5 million debt was paid by the leaseor, and we were profiting $40,000 to $60,000 a year on the lease. So that's been 10, 11 years. There's $600,000. Plus, we still have the property, and it's valued without the building, without the clubhouse, at $2.9 million. So I don't know where we lost any money. Now, the actual cost of the money that we had there, we could have used maybe, but that could have gone anywhere. That might have went into negotiation, or that might have went to a street.
And the book isn't closed on Arrowhead.
No, it's not closed yet. Plus, I did it primarily because I was the councilman of the 4th Ward. And, if a developer would have got that, you're looking at 250 houses put on that property, and the infrastructure just won't hold it.
And, none of us are perfect. We all have failures. Is there a failure?
Yeah, there is.
Tell us what it was.
Probably the thing I'm the least proud of that I did in my service to the community was when I went along with, and matter of fact, not only went along with, I might have been some of the driving force to do it, and that's bring Mayor Rice up on charges. That was wrong. That was, even though there was clear and convincing evidence, if we were in a court of law, it would have been a slam dunk. we had all the evidence we needed. But to bring him up by his own peers, even though the charter provided that, that's exactly what those people said. That was a kangaroo court. That was wrong. And I went to Mayor Rice and met with him in his attorney's office, Lee Placas. I picked up Marcia. I had just had gallbladder surgery, and I went and picked her up.
What year was this, just so we have the time?
Oh, that would have been around 2003, maybe, something like that. I met him with his wife, and I said, Mayor, I said to his wife, I said, I offer you my apologies for what I put you and your family through. Even though you'll never admit that the guilt that you had, which I understand, you're under the advice of your counsel, but we should have never brought you up on charges. That was wrong. Should have done exactly what Chuck is saying, and he was the person that instituted that by sending the complaints to the Ethics Commission and down to the prosecutor.
Who was that?
Chuck.
Osborne?
Yeah, but we should have done exactly what Chuck's saying now. Let the people decide. That's the mistake we made.
Well, turning to Chuck Osborne, he certainly has been a significant factor in your time as North Canton councilperson. Looking back, what do you have to say about Mr. Osborne?
He's I would say, best. I remember serving with him when he first came on. He came on, he tried for the appointment that Marcia got, and we didn't give it to him. Then he ran and successfully won at large. And he got into the meetings, and he jumped right in and took over for the zoning, and it became utter chaos. He would start apostolizing out here in the audience. We'd gavel the meeting closed and go home. He'd still be talking. But as far as his ability, Chuck's got a good mind. He's very thorough. Unfortunately, in my opinion, that's only my opinion, he'll research to the point where it bolsters his point of view. Every argument has two sides. I say that's agree to disagree. Somewhere in the middle is the answer. If everybody agrees, it's not a good negotiation. If you're both unhappy, it's a very good negotiation. And again, I refer back to his years as a lawyer, you know that. But Chuck's a bright guy. If he would not spend so much time on every little thing, he would find that he's called upon for counsel, for advice. He'd be called upon by the mayor for certain things. But as long as he takes every little thing, now I understand he's taking the minutes apart, saying that they're not correct. I don't know what it is if he just wants to be right, but pick a cause, a significant cause, and run with it. I mean, I remember when he was picketing outside here with a sign against the water line, which he was right on. Mayor Rice put a water line and it ran nowhere. But he got a picket sign, went up and down the street. I mean, we just weren't ready for him when he first came. I don't know if we're ready for him now.
Do you think that council at large, as a whole, is super sensitive to Mr. Osborne?
I think what it is I don't know if that's it. I think there's too much politics involved. I mean, this job requires leadership in the council, and I don't always agree with Mayor Held. And he's telling you the truth. I started speaking every morning at Mayor Held, 7 a.m. He'd call me, and I'd talk to him for an hour, talk to him at lunchtime, talk to him in the evening, sometimes till 10, 11 o'clock at night. He sought my advice. He knew I was learned and I was experienced in that. And I think that's what's lacking right now. They're afraid of Chuck because, they're picking every little thing apart. But you can't have a leader that will move either way. Take a stand and say, Chuck, I don't agree with you. You may be right, but I don't agree with you. But when he is right, you got to agree with him. And he's right as many times as he's wrong. I can't paint him as a civic, but unfortunately, he's lost a lot of credibility with people because, they make him the buffoon and people love to read about that. When I go around now, I was at church on Sunday, and a man came up to me, he said, North Canton lost the best councilman they ever had. I said, that's a very high compliment. And he's an elected official in the county. And I thought, God, that's a nice compliment. He says, but I bet you're not happy. I bet you're happy you don't have to put up with Osborne anymore. Well, really, I am not. I used to love the banter with him because I knew how to get his goat.
Well, and you talked a lot with Chuck outside council meetings.
Absolutely. And I had no problem. I had dinner with him and his wife. His wife's very bright. She gets frustrated. I mean, she doesn't really care about politics, I don't think. She's a very educated woman, but she's protecting her husband, which is rightfully so. You know, she's saying, don't make fun of my husband. Make sure you got the points. Don't criticize him on the merits. Don't make it personal. Chuck never made it personal. Always, to me, always took it on the merits. I will give him that credit. Never took it to where it was a personal thing. And he never did that.
A key factor in your coming to a decision to resign from council was the health care situation, where Osborne had got together an initiative petition, got it passed by, 72% of the voters, and you got a legal opinion from your law director that it wasn't effective because of, he thought there were some legal defects. In hindsight, would you like a do-over on how you worked on?
Oh, that would be great if I could. First of all, you know, when I found out, I knew I don't have employer-provided health care. So, and I had everything I needed to prove my point, and I just kept it back. But my wife was on my plan when I got married. She needed health care. And then when losing it like that, I got nervous, and I started calling around, and it was very costly.
What were you nervous about?
Well, about getting health care, because I was 67 years old, no health care. I'm in pretty good health, but a couple years ago I had a little problem. I had a little scare. I thought I had a little heart problem, which I didn't. But I figured I got to have health care. You didn't get health care. All I was going to do is pay for it. I'm questioning. I figured $972 for health care is ridiculous for both of us. So I just called OPERS in mid-February, and the lady, she said, well, you have to, in order to get on now, you have to resign by November the 30th. But you must notify us 60 days prior to your election to take it. Well, I knew then I could get Medicare. I was old enough. I didn't have Medicare, and I don't take my Social Security, so I called Social Security. I says, I don't draw Social Security. Can I still get Medicare? She says, yeah, we'll bill you. So I coordinated it to be June 1. I didn't realize that they would notify the city. About 2 days after I talked to her, the director of finance came down to see me. She had the letter from the state, and I said, Karen, I'm going to ask you to keep that and keep it under wraps, because I don't know if that's what I want to do. And she was honorable enough to do that. And then I seen it escalating. I sat there in that chair. I was no longer in leadership. Even though I was directing things, I didn't enjoy the same amount of I shouldn't say respect. It just wasn't the same. It's kind of like calling one of your closest friends a name, not meaning it, but out of frustration. It just never the same. And I seen then all the activists and all this picking, and then of course the situation, and ironically, when the clerk resigned on the 1st, my wife said to me, maybe I'll apply for that. I said, Kathy, are you sure you know what you want? I just want to see if I can get it. I said, well, I realize you're qualified, but are you sure that's what you want to get in? And that's another story. But I in hindsight, what I feel badly is I don't know in my heart, did I want to do that just to beat Chuck Osborne? That could be a lot of truth in that. If that's the case, that's not right to Chuck Osborne. But yet, what about the 7,000 people who voted for it, whether they fully understood it or not? I mean, there was a little deception.
And that was the argument for people who weren't all that keen in following the 72% is, well, they weren't really sure what they were doing. Was some of that? Yeah. Is that some of the talk that was going on?
Yeah, but how do you guide a person in a voting booth? My God, that's the greatest individual right a citizen has, is the right to strike a ballot. How can you second judge their opinion? I mean, look at some of the people get elected. I think, were you nuts when you voted for them? I can't say that.
Turning to MEDA.
Yes.
Mutual Economic Development.
I forgot about that one.
I know that that wasn't one of the things that you talked about tonight in your remarks, but that was near and dear.
Very close to me. Very close to me. And I purposely avoided that, Martin, because I got beat on that one. I had that lock, stock, and barrel. I talked to Randy Gonzalez and to Lou Gervais, and both treated me with the highest degree of respect. Mayor Healy, even though people questioned some of his things, treated me well. I had that ready to go. I should have called the vote that night. But that hurt me, because that was a salvation for this community.
And it's probably going to have reverberations.
No question. Where are they going to go?
Canton's future.
Where are you going to go? You're landlocked,
right.
Contrary to what they believe.
Well, that is a good segue into North Canton's future, which even though you're not on council, you're very much concerned about the future of North Canton.
Financially, as I told you, when I came here at $23 million, you know what?
Right.
$2 million now that has not been earmarked, and I don't know how much that'll be left after negotiation. But there is nothing in place. They blew the idea of the park levy off. The timing was right for a park levy, and that went away. That was $800,000. Would have taken them out for the next 2-3 years. I did tell Marcia, I called her and told her when she was voting for the truck, I said, change that around and move the monies from the water and sewer and street and take that $460,000 and return it back to capital so that it gets back into capital funds so that we can balance the budget going to 15, which she did. But that mutual economic development, on the surface, there wasn't a lot there. But what was there was the template for cooperation.
Right.
That truck,
that's what was missed by the people that opposed
that
it.
truck is one of them. That's $500,000. We own a truck. And if we use it twice a week, that's going to be a lot.
Were you surprised that Mayor Hill came out so strong against that?
Well, only from the fact I think he just, he had Mayor Healy on one side who didn't want us involved in it. I mean, he's got his own agenda.
Healy did not want North Canton involved?
That's what the mayor told me.
Oh, interesting.
And Dave didn't want any part of that. I don't know where he was taking his advice. But we had this once before with Jackson. We lost it. It went to Canton. We should have learned. I went to Randy. I said, Randy, we lost Kane. Kane will never come to the city of North Canton after he was exposed the way he was. Can't blame him.
Interesting. Just a few quick questions here. Is there a North Canton leader that you've seen to be a model leader over your years in Canton that you've looked to? Or is it John Snyder? Is John Snyder that leader?
I think I did a pretty good job.
Okay.
Darrell did a great job. Darrell didn't have a lot of people skills. Darrell had a grand mind, still does. I learned a lot from Darrell. I learned a lot from Tom Treeden, Roy Batista, believe it or not, when Roy was in his prime. The fairness and the equity of those men, they're unbelievable. Just great.
So Mike Treeden was a law director, right?
Treeden was the law director.
Was he the best at?
He's one of the best. Brilliant man. Knew the law, knew his place. Was with Rutzel and Anders, a very, very bright guy. Roy Batista in his day, but Roy was a lot younger, and he served as solicitor 2 or 3 cities. I like to work with Roy. I had a good time. Going back, members of the council that I work with comes to mind Timmy Morrow. Very bright guy. Extremely bright, witty, quick on his feet. Mike Miller, the administrator. Didn't have a lot of people skills either, but was a very, very bright guy. I enjoyed working with him.
People skills are vitally important.
Vitally important.
Politics, right?
Mostly important. Without a person, I can teach anybody this job. Without a person, I used to tell Marcia that, without a personality, when you go to somebody's house and it's 6 feet of water in a basement, they could give a rat's ass if you're the president of council or if you're the clerk or sweeping the floor. Would
Tom Treeden be a good model for Tim Fox?
Absolutely. Tim Fox, and I say this, Tim, when you see this, I respectfully say this, you need to develop some people skills. It's not all black and white. give a little. Just give a little. And I mean, the law director is not supposed to be out in front orchestrating things. They're supposed to keep you out of trouble.
But is he taking his cues from council?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'd like to know, here's an instance here. How did you have one meeting in July when the charter specifically says it's a special meeting at that? The charter, if you read it, says council will hold 2 meetings a month.
So you think he's off on his own?
Well, or somebody's leading him. I don't know who, but he's either off the reservation somewhere. I mean, when I was here, I talked to him every day. He didn't make a move without talking to me. But to his credit, I got to say this: he doesn't have a clerk, so he's fudging along, trying to do the best he can.
Okay.
He doesn't have a clerk here; he's doing her job and his alone. And see what happens with this new clerk. We'll find out where things are and what it's about. But he's a good guy.
Stark County. Mm-hmm. Who do you, in your time in government and politics, who do you think has been Stark County's most effective leader?
The two I could have to tell you would be Tom Burnaby and Janet Creighton. I think they both did a miraculous job. And coming up behind him would be Alan Harold. Brilliant kid, very bright, got personality, does a great job. Alex Zumbar, but Alex is a little bit reserved. He's a little quick to fire the shot before he. But Janet and Tom probably they have depth. Not only do they have personality, they have a lot of depth.
Are you optimistic for the future of North Canton?
I'm scared. There's nothing in place. It takes, if we're going to look at new revenue streams, it takes a year to almost a year and a half. It takes a half a year to get it out on the ballot. And, I don't want to, I'm not, even though I pitched it, the merits of it up here about taking the tax credit away from income tax, that'll kill you economically.
So council needs to make a decision
quickly.
Soon.
They should have never went on recess without making some decision.
Because they're not going to meet again until
late August. So the earliest they're going to get anything done would be January. You've got green leadership. You've got a green councilman. I mean, it's not going back to the years when we had $24 million in the bank. That went away in 17 years. You need reserves. This is a business.
So North Canton has to square up with that the Hoover days are over and done with.
They're not
never
coming back
again.
No. Council was only thing that council had to do with this Hoover property over here. I shepherded through the council the legislation that would require the different tenants to get the different things. We didn't bring them. That's all the state. But let's see where that's gone. But that's not the answer. It's still the revenue, not generating revenue. I was instrumental in putting the DD down underneath my tuck shop. That's 80 jobs. Those jobs average $50,000. Those are the kind of jobs we need to get. If we can get more of them, there's 100 of them. That's great. But the mayor was instrumental in getting the workers' comp over there. That's a great find for us.
One final point. I've asked you a lot of questions. You've been terrific to handle them all. And is there anything that I haven't asked that you want to share with the citizens of North Canton or to your former fellow council members?
I would say I was heartfelt. I was moved, as you can see, emotionally.
You were.
Because I'm very passionate about this community. I made a living. I made a very nice living here. My wife and I live here. She's involved in her little theater. I'm involved in that. I'm appreciative of them doing that. I'm appreciative to the press and to you, even though they didn't always treat me in my eyes or somebody else. I shouldn't say fairly, the way I'd like to see myself. That was always fairly, but the way I'd like to see myself portrayed. But they were always fair about it. And I always tried to be honest. I never lied. I never cheated. Never took a dime. I will tell this to you right now. I'm coming back. And what position, I don't know yet. But
in a political position?
In a political position.
Oh, so you're going to run for office again?
I'm going to run for office. Okay.